This is the first ever nonstick pan that lasts forever. At least that's what the company Misen wants you to believe. Earlier this year, they launched this pan on Kickstarter, claiming that it's as easy to use as nonstick while also being as long-lasting as carbon steel. And that bold promise, along with a list of others, led to over $2 million in pre-orders. To see if this pan lives up to the hype, I tested each claim one by one. I cooked dozens of eggs in it, scraped it with metal utensils, simmered acidic foods, left it wet overnight to check for rust, cooked at extremely high temperatures, tested it for warping, and compared its weight and maneuverability to the competition. I also ran it through the same heat conduction and retention tests that I've done with over 60 other pans I've reviewed. In this video, I show you which claims held up and which ones didn't. By the end, you'll know whether this pan is a genius invention or just another well-marketed gimmick. The biggest claim Misen makes is that this pan is non-stick right out of the box and that it stays that way. So that's the first thing I tested. Before I show you what I did, it's important to understand that this pan doesn't have a Teflon or ceramic non-stick coating. Instead, it's made of 3 layers, an aluminum core sandwiched between 2 layers of nitrided carbon steel. Nitriding is the process where the carbon steel is baked in a super hot nitrogen-rich oven, which hardens the surface and makes it more corrosion resistant. That hardness also gives it better food release than raw carbon steel, even without any seasoning. To test the nonstick claims, I started with eggs. Right after unboxing and washing the pan, I cooked a fried egg with a small amount of butter, and it didn't stick at all. I didn't pay too much attention to the heat, I just preheated it on medium for a couple of minutes. I also tried another egg with just a teaspoon of oil, and while it stuck a little bit to my spatula, it didn't stick to the pan. When I cooked scrambled eggs and omelets, those released cleanly from the surface as well. I also cooked pancakes, vegetables, burgers, and pork without any sticking. The only exceptions were salmon, which started to stick, but it was probably because I tried to flip it too early, and a few eggs that stuck when I clearly overheated the pan. But overall, it performed like a well-seasoned carbon steel pan. You still need to grease it, and I wouldn't say it's as slippery as a brand new Teflon-coated pan, but it's noticeably easier to use right out of the box than traditional carbon steel. Misen also says that it will get more nonstick as seasoning develops over time, so I'll keep using it and see how that actually plays out. The next claim that I tested was durability. Misen says this pan will last forever. They say that it won't warp, and you can use metal utensils without scratching or peeling the surface. So in addition to using metal utensils every time I cooked with it, I also ran a few controlled tests. Before I get into that, I want to quickly thank GoDaddy for sponsoring this video. When I first started my business 8 years ago, one of the first things I did was use GoDaddy to register PrudentReviews.com. But today, GoDaddy does so much more than that, especially with their new AI tool called GoDaddy Aero. If you're a small business owner like me, or you're thinking about becoming one, GoDaddy Aero makes it incredibly easy to get started online in just minutes. Let's say you want to start a business reviewing vacuum cleaners. All you have to do is enter a few keywords, and Aero will recommend the best available domains. Once you choose one, it will ask you a couple questions about your business, and then immediately start building a coming soon website for you. From there, you can tweak the headline and background image, and within seconds, your website is live. It's a great way to give future customers a preview while you work on building out the rest. You can also create a logo, schedule social media posts, and generate email templates, all powered by AI. If you're ready to start your dream business, check out the link in the video description to give it a try. Now let's get back to the durability tests. First, I attached a 5-pound weight to a metal ladle and scraped it back and forth across the cooking surface 50 times. Then I did the same thing with a metal spatula. I also set up a test using a stand mixer. I propped the pan so the whisk made full contact and let it run on low for 2 minutes. All 3 tests left some rub marks, but no actual scratches, gouges, or permanent damage to the surface. And just to make sure the performance wasn't affected, I cooked eggs in the pan right after, and there were no issues. To put those results in context, I ran the same tests on a Teflon-coated pan, a ceramic nonstick pan, and a hex-clad pan, and all 3 of those ended up with visible scratches or coating damage after 1 or more of the tests. Warping is another concern, especially with carbon steel pans, and especially on induction cooktops that heat extremely fast. Traditional carbon steel is made from a single layer of metal, which tends to heat unevenly. When different parts of the pan expand at different rates, it creates stress in the metal, and that can lead to warping. Because the Misen pan has an aluminum core, in theory, it should spread heat more evenly and resist that stress. To test that, I measured how flat the bottom was before and after heating the pan to 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 minutes on an induction cooktop. The pan started out slightly concave, which is normal. Manufacturers often build that in to account for expansion. After heating, the shape didn't change at all. I ran the same test on several other carbon steel pans, and not all of them held their shape. Another bold claim Misen makes is that these pans don't need to be seasoned. You can start cooking with them right away, even with acidic ingredients, and you can wash them with soap or soak them overnight without it rusting. That's very different from traditional carbon steel pans, which need to be seasoned to prevent rust. And even once they're seasoned, that layer is not permanent. Acidic foods like tomato sauce can strip it. Boiling liquids can cause it to flake, and eventually you need to re-season it. Misen claims that none of that is necessary because their carbon steel is nitrided. To test this, I wetted the Misen pan, a well-seasoned Lodge carbon steel pan, and a Debouillet carbon steel pan with spotty seasoning and some exposed steel, and I left them wet overnight. The next day, the Debouillet was rusty. The Lodge and the Misen pans had no rust at all. To test how each pan reacts to acidic foods, I poured crushed tomatoes in each pan and simmered them for 15 minutes. After rinsing, the seasoning on the Debouillet pan was almost completely gone, and the Lodge looked noticeably lighter. The Misen had no visible change. After that, I repeated the water test and left all 3 pans wet overnight. This time, the Debouillet was heavily rusted, and now the Lodge was also rusted, likely because the tomatoes wore down the seasoning. Fortunately, the Misen still showed no signs of rust. For one final test, I poured clean water into the Lodge and Misen pans, brought it to a boil for 10 minutes, then poured the water back into the glasses. The water from the Misen pan was completely clear. The water from the Lodge pan was cloudy, which is a sign that bits of seasoning had leached into the water. That's normal for seasoned carbon steel, but with Misen, at least while it's still unseasoned, it didn't happen. Another claim Misen makes is that this pan, due to the aluminum core, is more responsive to temperature changes, which makes cooking more efficient and precise. To test that, I heated the pan on medium and measured the surface temperature after 2 minutes, the same way I test every pan I review. And the results back up the claim. The Misen pan heated up extremely fast. It was the fastest carbon steel pan I tested, and the second fastest pan across all materials. I also measured the temperature at the edge of the pan. It had the 3rd lowest difference between the center and the edge among all carbon steel pans I tested, which means it heats relatively evenly. And I noticed the same thing in real-world cooking. Food near the edge browned almost as evenly as food in the center. To test heat retention or how fast it cools, I heated the pan to exactly 400 degrees Fahrenheit, removed it from the heat, and measured the surface temperature after 5 minutes. It was the 3rd fastest carbon steel pan to cool down. So in terms of responsiveness and even heating, Misen lives up to its promises. One of the most underrated benefits of this pan is how lightweight it is, especially compared to traditional carbon steel or cast iron. This 10-inch Misen pan weighs just 2.4 pounds, which is lighter than even some of the thinnest carbon steel pans I've tested. It's also lighter than many aluminum nonstick and stainless steel pans. It's not light because it's thin. The base is about 3 millimeters thick, and the walls taper to 2.5 millimeters. It's light because it has an aluminum core, and the fact that aluminum is less dense than carbon steel. So far, this pan lives up to its claims, but there are a few downsides worth mentioning. First, the handle is comfortable, but the rounded edges make it a little slippery, especially if you're wearing an oven mitt or washing it with soapy hands. I prefer handles like the one on the Strata pan, which has a subtle groove on top that gives you a more secure grip and prevents it from rotating. Another design element I don't love is the shallow sidewalls. On both the 10 and 12-inch versions, the walls are only 1.75 inches tall. Most pans this size have closer to 2-inch walls or higher. Lower walls don't contain splatter well, but most importantly, you won't be able to fit as much volume, especially with liquids or sauces. Heat retention is another trade-off. Misen designed this pan to be responsive, so it cools quickly, which can be great for many things, but it can also be a drawback. Even Misen admits their regular carbon steel holds heat better, which makes it more effective for searing. I noticed this when cooking turkey burgers. Once the pan got crowded, it lost heat and took a while to recover, which made it harder to get a good sear. I also noticed it when shallow frying tortillas. The heat wasn't as steady, and I had to adjust the dial a few times to keep it from getting too hot. The end results were fine in both cases, but this kind of heat loss could be an issue with thick steaks or anything that requires steady heat over long periods. So after all of that testing, is the Misen pan worth buying? Before I give you my take, I just want to let you know that I've linked to this pan in the video description if you want to check it out. The short answer is yes, it definitely is worth buying. It's not as slick as a brand new Teflon coated pan, but the hardened surface is noticeably more non-stick than stainless steel, cast iron, or even pre-seasoned carbon steel. It's built to last, and you don't have to worry about seasoning, rust, or acidic foods damaging the surface. It's a great option for anyone looking to replace their non-stick pan with something more durable, but without the weight or maintenance of traditional carbon steel. The biggest argument against it is that it's not that different from a fully clad stainless steel pan. And many stainless steel options, like heritage steel, are made in the US and cost just about the same. You won't get the same level of food release, but as I've shown in other videos, stainless steel can become non-stick with the right heat and fat. All that said, I'm a big fan of this Misen pan. It lives up to its claims, and it's a meaningful step towards reducing the need for disposable cookware. If you're interested in Misen, you'll definitely want to check out my review of the Strata pan. It has a similar multi-layer carbon steel construction, but there are a few key differences you need to know before deciding between the two. And for more videos like this, click the logo to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.